I'm Mason, a 31-year-old software engineer who grew up in a middle-class Ohio family where I always felt like the forgotten child. While my younger sister Sophia received endless support and attention. I struggled through college alone, working multiple jobs just to survive. Now, after years of building my career from nothing, my parents dropped a bombshell during dinner last month. They want me to loan them $25,000 for Sophia's extravagant wedding, the same parents who couldn't spare a dime for my education. Before I tell you how I finally stood up to my family, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to fight for the respect you deserve. Growing up in suburban Dayton, Ohio, I always sensed something was off about my place in our family. My earliest memory of this feeling came on my 7th birthday. Mom and Dad gave me a practical set of school supplies, while just months earlier they'd thrown Sophia an elaborate princess-themed party for her 5th birthday, complete with a custom-cake bouncy castle and a mountain of gifts. I remember telling myself it was because I was older and more mature that I didn't need all that kid stuff. Looking back, I was already making excuses for their behavior. Our modest 2-story home on Maple Street became the stage for countless examples of their favoritism. When Sophia started playing soccer, Dad never missed a game. He'd cheer from the sidelines, camera in hand, documenting her every move. Meanwhile, when I made the debate team in 8th grade and advanced to the state championship, neither parent attended. "Someone has to take Sophia to her dance recital," Mom explained the night before my competition. I won 1st place, but celebrated with my coach and teammates instead of family. By the time I turned 15, I'd accepted that academic achievement was my path forward, even if it went largely unnoticed at home. I maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout high school, often studying late into the night after finishing my shift at the local grocery store. The part-time job had been my dad's suggestion. "It builds character, Mason," he'd said while driving me to my interview. "Your sister isn't wired like you. She's more sensitive, more creative. But you've got a good head for responsibility." At the time, I took it as a compliment. Now I recognize it as the beginning of a pattern, positioning Sophia as needing protection and support while I was expected to fend for myself. Christmas mornings told the same story. Sophia would unwrap new phones, designer clothes, and whatever else topped her wish list. My gifts were invariably practical. A new backpack, winter boots, or once a set of SAT prep books. The message was clear: if unspoken, Sophia deserved indulgence, while I needed to focus on self-sufficiency. The inequality extended beyond material things. When Sophia struggled with algebra in 9th grade, Dad hired a private tutor without hesitation. When I mentioned wanting to attend a summer engineering program that could strengthen my college applications, Mom sighed about finances being tight. "Maybe you could save up for it yourself. You're so good with money, Mason." Despite everything, I loved my family. That's the complicated truth that made the hurt so much deeper. I wanted my parents' approval, desperately convincing myself that if I just achieved enough, they'd finally see me. I channeled that yearning into motivation, joining every academic club possible, and even founding our school's robotics team. The team won a regional championship my senior year. My parents attended the ceremony but left early to take Sophia shopping for her sophomore homecoming dress. The most painful memory from those years came during my high school graduation. As valedictorian, I delivered a speech I'd worked on for weeks, pouring my heart into words about perseverance and future potential. When I returned to my seat, glowing from the standing ovation, I overheard my dad telling a neighboring parent, "That's my son up there, but you should see my daughter's paintings. She's the real creative genius in the family." That night, during our small family celebration dinner, my parents spent most of the evening discussing Sophia's upcoming summer plans, rather than my accomplishment or college future. I sat quietly picking at my food, still wearing my honor cords and medal invisible in plain sight. Despite it all, I entered that summer with hope. College would be my fresh start, my chance to prove myself on my own terms. I'd been accepted to several excellent engineering programs, including my dream school with a partial scholarship. Surely now, with such tangible evidence of my potential, my parents would finally step up and show me the same support they'd always given Sophia. I couldn't have been more wrong. The college acceptance letters arrived in a flurry that spring. I'd been strategic in my applications, focusing on strong engineering programs while being mindful of potential financial aid. The partial scholarship to Michigan Tech was the crown jewel, covering about 40% of my tuition for a program ranked in the top 20 nationwide. I couldn't wait to share the news. I chose a Sunday dinner in April to make my announcement printout of the scholarship letter in hand. Mom had made her special pot roast, and the mood was light. Perfect timing, I thought. "I've made my decision," I said, trying to contain my excitement. "I'm accepting the offer from Michigan Tech. They have an amazing computer science program, and I got that scholarship I was hoping for." Dad nodded, taking a sip of his water. "That's a good school. When do they need the first tuition payment?" "Early August," I replied. "The scholarship covers about 40%, and I've saved almost $5,000 from my job. I was hoping we could talk about how to handle the rest." The silence that followed still echoes in my memory. Mom and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Mason," Dad finally said, setting down his fork, "we've always been straight with you. You know we're not in a position to contribute much to your college." The floor seemed to drop beneath me. "But I got the scholarship. I've been saving. I just need some help with the difference." "You're smart and capable," Mom added, her voice gentle but firm. "You'll figure it out. There are loans work-study programs. This is part of becoming independent." "What about the college fund? You started one when I was born. You mentioned it when I was younger." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Another exchange of glances between them. "We had to redirect some of those funds over the years," Dad explained vaguely. "Family expenses. But don't worry, we'll make sure Sophia's covered when her time comes. She's not as independent as you are." The words hit like physical blows. Not as independent. For not as expendable. "I see." I carefully folded the scholarship letter and placed it beside my plate. The rest of the meal passed in a blur. That summer became a crash course in financial reality. I researched student loans, filled out countless forms for additional grants, and increased my work hours to squeeze out every possible dollar before departure. While friends enjoyed their last carefree months before college, I worked double shifts, coming home exhausted only to spend hours on scholarship applications. Meanwhile, Sophia was at an expensive summer arts camp fully funded by our parents. I arrived at Michigan Tech that fall, with determination hardened by disappointment. My financial aid package had come together, but barely. A patchwork of federal loans, my savings, and a small university grant. I'd need to work throughout the school year to afford books, food, and housing. My first apartment was a cramped 2-bedroom unit shared with 3 other students, all of us trying to minimize living expenses. My bedroom was actually a converted dining nook with a curtain for privacy, but the rent was cheap. Our furniture consisted of cast-offs and curbside finds. I slept on an air mattress for the entire first semester until I could afford a used futon. My schedule that first year was brutal. Classes from morning until mid-afternoon, then straight to my campus job at the library until closing. Weekends meant shifts at a local diner, where I could sometimes bring home leftover food, a significant perk when ramen and peanut butter sandwiches were dietary staples. The toll wasn't just physical. I watched as other students joined clubs, attended campus events, and built the social connections that college is supposed to foster. I missed most of these opportunities, too busy working or too exhausted to participate. When classmates planned weekend trips or ordered late-night pizza, I made excuses rather than admit I couldn't afford it. The winter break of freshman year brought another painful contrast. Returning home, I found Sophia's room upgraded with new furniture and a laptop to help with her high school projects. My old room remained unchanged, except for some of my things having been moved to the attic to create more space. It was during my sophomore year that two pivotal relationships changed my trajectory. The first was with Professor Edwards, my advanced programming instructor. After I aced his notoriously difficult midterm, he asked me to stay after class. "You have a gift for this," he said, looking over my code. "But you look exhausted. Everything okay?" Something about his genuine concern broke through my carefully constructed facade. I found myself explaining my situation, the multiple jobs, the financial stress, the lack of family support. Instead of pity, he offered practical help. "The computer science department needs teaching assistants for the intro courses. The pay is better than the library, and it looks great on a resume. I'll recommend you." That TA position reduced my working hours while actually increasing my income. Professor Edwards also became a mentor, guiding my course selections, and eventually connecting me with a summer internship at a Seattle tech company that paid actual money instead of just offering experience. The second relationship began in an algorithm study group. Trevor, a fellow computer science major, came from a stable, supportive family in Portland. We bonded over coding challenges and gradually became friends beyond the classroom. Trevor was the first person to directly acknowledge the inequality I'd grown up with. "Dude, that's messed up," he said plainly, after hearing about my parents' refusal to help with college while promising to cover Sophia's future education. "My parents would never play favorites like that." His straightforward validation was surprisingly healing. Trevor's family even adopted me in small ways. His mom sending care packages with homemade cookies addressed to both of us. His dad offering advice about internships and career planning. When my laptop died before finals week junior year, and I couldn't afford to replace it, Trevor's parents sent money for a new one, calling it an early graduation gift. Those 4 years were a constant struggle, but I persevered. I graduated with honors in computer science with Professor Edwards proudly watching from the faculty section. Trevor and his parents cheered loudly when my name was called. My own parents attended, of course, but their excitement seemed muted compared to their reaction at Sophia's high school graduation the same month. While they took dozens of photos of Sophia with her friends and teachers, they managed only a quick family picture after my ceremony, before discussing where to take Sophia for her celebratory dinner. As I packed my belongings that summer, preparing to move to Seattle for my first post-college job, I realized I was packing away my expectations of parental approval along with my textbooks and clothes. I'd built my own success without their support. Now, I would build my own life without their validation. I left Ohio with a computer science degree, substantial student loan debt, and a determination to never look back. Seattle welcomed me with persistent rain and limitless opportunity. My entry-level software development position at Horizon Tech didn't pay spectacularly, but after years of poverty-level student living, my salary felt like sudden wealth. I found an affordable studio apartment in Fremont, tiny but mine alone, and began establishing routines that didn't revolve around constant work and study. Those early professional years taught me as much about workplace dynamics as technical skills. I quickly learned to volunteer for challenging projects. Others avoided making myself valuable beyond my junior status. Every day was a learning experience, sometimes exhilarating, sometimes humbling, but always moving forward. 18 months in, I completed a critical database migration project 2 weeks ahead of schedule. My manager noticed. "You've got serious potential, Mason," she said during my review. "Keep this up and you won't be junior level for long." The validation from a respected professional meant more than any approval I'd sought from my parents. I maintained minimal contact with my family during this time. Obligatory phone calls on holidays and birthdays, mostly listening to updates about Sophia's college experience. She'd started at an expensive private art school fully funded by our parents, as promised, then switched majors 3 times in her first 2 years. "She's finding herself," Mom explained during a Christmas call. "We just want her to be happy with her choice." I bit back the obvious comparison to my own experience and changed the subject. As my career advanced, I began attending industry conferences and meetups, expanding my professional network. At a JavaScript conference downtown, I met Haley. Brilliant, confident, and disarmingly direct. She approached me after my presentation on optimization techniques. "Your solution for the memory leak issue was elegant," she said, "but I think there's an even more efficient approach." She proceeded to outline an alternative that was indeed better than mine. I was simultaneously humbled and intrigued. Our first date lasted 5 hours, dinner extending into coffee, then a long walk along the waterfront discussing everything from algorithm efficiency to favorite childhood books. With Haley, conversation was effortless. She worked as a UX designer at a competing tech firm, bringing a perspective that complemented my more back-end focused experience. As our relationship deepened, I witnessed family dynamics I'd never experienced. Haley's parents treated their 3 children with consistent love and support, celebrating each person's unique strengths without comparison or favoritism. The first time I joined them for a holiday dinner, her father made a toast that included something positive about each family member's year. The casual, genuine affection between them all was almost disorienting to witness. "Your parents are amazing," I told Haley afterward. "They're not perfect, but they try to be fair," she replied. Then, after I'd shared more about my own upbringing, "What happened to you wasn't fair, Mason. It wasn't about you not deserving support. It was about them failing as parents." Her perspective helped me see my childhood through a different lens. Maybe I wasn't lacking. Maybe they were. 3 years into my Seattle life, I received a significant promotion to senior software engineer, accompanied by a salary increase that finally allowed me to accelerate my student loan payments. I celebrated by opening my first investment account, a small but symbolic step toward long-term financial security. The following year, I put a down payment on a modest 1-bedroom condo in Ballard. After a lifetime of temporary spaces, the shared bedroom with constantly shifting furniture, the curtained alcove in college rented apartments, I finally had a home that was truly mine. I spent weekends painting walls, assembling furniture, and slowly transforming the space into a reflection of myself rather than a temporary shelter. Meanwhile, updates from Ohio continued in their predictable pattern. Sophia finally graduated after 5.5 years with no immediate job prospects. My parents bought her a new car as a graduation gift to help with her job search and subsidized her apartment in Cincinnati while she found her creative path. During one of my rare visits home, I noticed framed photos of Sophia throughout the house, documenting every life stage from infancy through college graduation. My presence was limited to a single family portrait and one graduation photo tucked on a side table. I mentioned this observation to Trevor during our next phone call. "You've built a great life despite them, not because of them," he reminded me. "Their approval isn't the measure of your worth." He was right. I'd created a chosen family in Seattle, close friends, professional mentors, and Haley, whose love was consistent and unconditional. We'd been together for nearly 2 years recently, discussing moving in together. Her lease would end in 3 months, and my condo had plenty of room for both of us. My career continued its upward trajectory. I led development for a major product feature that increased user engagement by 38%. The project's success earned me a spot on a high-visibility innovation team working directly with senior leadership to shape the company's technical direction. Life had developed a comfortable rhythm. Challenging work, I enjoyed weekends, exploring the Pacific Northwest with Haley, and friends' occasional game nights or dinner parties in our growing social circle. I'd found stability and connection on my own terms. Then came the phone call that disrupted everything. "Mason, sweetheart, how are you?" My mother's voice carried that particular tone I recognized from childhood, the one that preceded a request. "Your father and I are planning a trip to Seattle next month. We'd love to see you and your apartment. Maybe meet this girlfriend we've been hearing about." My parents had never visited me in the 6 years I'd lived in Seattle. Something was definitely up. "That should work," I replied cautiously. "Let me know your dates." "Wonderful, oh, and we have such exciting news. Sophia's engaged. Brandon proposed last weekend. They're planning the wedding for next summer." "That's great," I said automatically. "Tell her congratulations from me." "We will. We'll tell you all about their plans when we see you. It's going to be quite the celebration." I hung up with a vague sense of unease. My parents never made special trips without an agenda. Whatever was coming, I sensed it would test the boundaries and self-worth I'd worked so hard to build. The restaurant I selected for dinner with my parents was a mid-range seafood place with a view of Puget Sound. Nice enough to be special without appearing ostentatious. I'd arrived early, securing a quiet corner table where we could talk without shouting over other diners. Haley had offered to join us, but I'd decided to face this initial reunion alone. Mom spotted me first, waving enthusiastically as they weaved between tables. She looked older than I remembered, the lines around her eyes deeper. Her dyed blonde hair failing to completely cover the gray. Dad followed behind, his once broad shoulders, slightly stooped, his smile stiff, with what I recognized as his social discomfort. "Mason!" Mom pulled me into a hug, her familiar perfume triggering a cascade of childhood memories. "Look at you, so handsome and professional." Dad offered a firm handshake. "Son, place looks expensive. Doing well for yourself, I see." The comment carried his typical undercurrent. Part approval, part suggestion that I might be getting above myself. I let it slide. "It's good to see you both. How was your flight?" The initial conversation flowed through safe topics: their hotel accommodations, Seattle weather compared to Ohio, superficial updates about neighbors I barely remembered. Then, predictably, the focus shifted. "Sophia is just over the moon about the engagement," Mom gushed, pulling out her phone to show me photos. "Brandon comes from such a good family. His father owns several car dealerships in the Cincinnati area." I nodded, examining the picture of my sister and her fiancé, both beaming, her left hand prominently displaying a sizable diamond. "They look happy." "They're perfect together," Dad agreed. "Brandon's a bit traditional, wanted to ask for my blessing before proposing. Good head on his shoulders." Our appetizers arrived temporarily, pausing the conversation. I noticed my parents exchanging glances. The same silent communication I remembered from childhood discussions about finances. My unease deepened. "So," Mom continued after the server departed, "the wedding plans are coming together beautifully. Sophia's found this gorgeous venue, Rosewood Manor. It's usually booked years in advance." They had a cancellation for next June. "Sounds nice," I offered, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "It's exceptional," she emphasized. "Perfect garden for the ceremony ballroom that can accommodate 200 guests, in-house catering with a renowned chef." Dad cleared his throat. "It's also exceptionally expensive." And there it was. "Brandon's parents are contributing," Mom added quickly. "But they're also paying for the rehearsal dinner and honeymoon. And with the cost of everything these days..." I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone. "How much are you asking me for?" Their momentary surprise at my directness quickly gave way to what appeared to be rehearsed responses. "We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important," Dad said, leaning forward. "Sophia deserves her dream wedding. We're talking about $25,000, just a loan until we can sell some investments." The amount hung in the air between us. $25,000, more than my entire college savings had been, more than the amount I'd worked multiple jobs to earn while studying. And they called it just a loan. Let me understand this, I said slowly. You couldn't help me with college. You told me family finances were tight. You made me work through school while covering Sophia's education completely. And now you want me to loan you $25,000 for her wedding. Mom's expression shifted to the wounded look she'd perfected over years of family disagreements. That was different, Mason. You were always so capable, so independent. And you turned out wonderfully. Look at your success. Despite not because of, I muttered. What was that? Dad asked sharply. Nothing. I took a deep breath. Why not take out a bank loan or downsize the wedding plans? Dad's face hardened. Banks ask too many questions. And Sophia's had her heart set on this venue since she was a teenager. Family supports family, Mason. You're doing well for yourself. This is your chance to be there for your sister. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost impressive. Frame my reluctance as failing my sister rather than questioning their favoritism. Position their request as an opportunity for me to demonstrate family loyalty rather than another example of their unequal treatment. I need to think about it, I finally said, unable to formulate a more definitive response through the emotions churning inside me. Of course, Mom replied, patting my hand. But the venue needs the deposit soon to hold the date. Maybe you could let us know by next week. The remainder of dinner passed in strained conversation. They declined my half-hearted offer to show them my condo, citing early travel plans for the following day. We parted with awkward hugs and their promise to call soon for my decision. I drove home in a daze, my mind replaying not just the dinner conversation, but a lifetime of similar moments. Requests framed as opportunities, guilt deployed as a tactical weapon, my needs consistently subordinated to Sophia's desires. Haley was waiting at my condo, curled up on the couch with a book. One look at my face told her everything. That bad? She asked, setting aside her reading. I collapsed beside her, emotionally exhausted. They want $25,000 for Sophia's wedding. A loan, they said, though I doubt I'd ever see that money again. Haley's expression shifted from concern to outrage. The same parents who made you work through college while paying for hers. Are they serious? Completely. They acted like it was the most natural request in the world, like I owe this to them somehow. You don't, she said firmly. You don't owe them anything, Mason. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay awake. Haley's steady breathing beside me, wrestling with conflicting emotions. There was anger, certainly, at the audacity of their request at the lifetime of unequal treatment. But beneath that simmered hurt, that childhood yearning for approval that apparently still lived within me. And deeper still, a question: if I refused, would I be cutting the last threads connecting me to my family? The next morning I called Trevor. Our friendship had weathered the post-college transition sustained by regular calls and occasional visits. He knew my family history better than anyone except Haley. They want how much? He exclaimed after I explained the situation. $25,000. For a wedding, man, that's insane, especially given, well, everything. I know, I sighed. Part of me wants to say yes just to avoid the conflict, to be the bigger person. Being the bigger person doesn't mean being a doormat, Trevor replied bluntly. They've been taking advantage of your reasonableness your entire life. Maybe it's time they faced reality. What if it ends things between us for good? What exactly would you be losing? Mason parents who value you less than your sister, who see you as a resource rather than a son. Maybe the relationship needs to end, or at least change dramatically. His words resonated painfully with realizations I'd been avoiding. My relationship with my parents had always been transactional, rather than nurturing. I had given effort, achievement, self-reliance, emotional accommodation, while they had primarily taken. As the week progressed, my parents called daily, each conversation increasingly pressured. The venue won't hold the date much longer, Mom insisted. Sophia's been crying about potentially losing her dream location. The emotional manipulation was familiar, but now transparent. With each call, my resolve strengthened. This request represented the entirety of our relationship. They expected me to give while they prioritized Sophia's wants. The pattern wouldn't change unless I changed it. But before I could deliver my decision, I needed to confirm something that had been nagging at me since our dinner. A suspicion about the past that would influence my future actions. The flight to Ohio felt like traveling backward in time. As the plane descended toward Dayton, familiar landmarks emerged through the clouds. The winding Miami River, the cluster of downtown buildings, the sprawling suburbs where I'd grown up. I hadn't planned this trip, but after a week of sleepless nights and circular thinking, I needed to confront my parents face to face about their request. More importantly, I needed answers about the pass. I rented a car at the airport, opting for a basic economy model despite the agent's persistent upselling attempts. Old habits die hard. Years of financial vigilance had become ingrained. The spring afternoon was unseasonably warm as I navigated familiar streets toward my childhood neighborhood. Instead of heading directly to my parents' house, I made a detour. The modest rancher with the meticulously maintained garden belonged to Mr. Jenkins, our former next-door neighbor. A retired high school principal, he had always been kind to me attending my debate competitions when my parents couldn't make it and hiring me for lawn work during summers. If anyone would give me honest answers, it would be him. His eyebrows rose in surprise when he opened the door. "Mason! Good Lord, look at you all grown up. What brings you back to town?" "Family matters," I replied vaguely. "Thought I'd stop by and say hello while I'm here." His living room remained unchanged from my childhood memories. Comfortable furniture, bookshelves lining the walls, the faint scent of pipe tobacco, though he'd quit smoking years ago. We settled in with iced tea, catching up on the intervening years. I told him about Seattle, my career, and Haley. He shared neighborhood gossip and updates on his grandchildren. When the conversation naturally ebbed, I carefully steered it toward my real purpose. My parents mentioned they're helping Sophia plan her wedding. Sounds like quite an event. Mr. Jenkins nodded. "Oh yes, your mother talks about it constantly. Quite the production from what I gather." "They've always gone all out for Sophia," I said, keeping my tone light. "Remember how they handled our college years? Sophia got the full ride from them while I worked my way through." A flicker of confusion crossed his face. "That's not how I remember it, Mason. Your parents were so proud of that college fund they'd built for you. Your father mentioned it often, how they'd started saving when you were born, determined to give both their children debt-free educations." My hand froze midway to my glass. "They told you they had a college fund for me?" "Certainly. Robert showed me the statement once. Must have been around your junior year of high school. Quite impressive, nearly $60,000 if I recall correctly. They were equally committed to both you and Sophia's education, at least from what they told me." The room seemed to tilt slightly. $60,000. More than enough to have covered what my scholarship didn't. Enough to have spared me years of exhausting work study and the student loans I was still repaying. "Are you all right, son? You've gone quite pale." I forced a smile. "Just surprised. There must have been some misunderstanding. They couldn't help with my college expenses." Mr. Jenkins frowned. "That's strange. They definitely told the neighborhood they were paying for both children's education. We're quite proud of it, actually." I thanked him for his time shortly afterward, my mind racing with implications. The drive to my parents' house passed in a blur of emotions. Shock giving way to anger, then a cold, clarifying rage I'd never allowed myself to feel before. Their car was in the driveway, along with another I didn't recognize. I hadn't called ahead, preferring the element of surprise. Dad answered the door, his initial smile faltering at my expression. "Mason, we weren't expecting you. Is everything okay?" "We need to talk," I said, stepping past him into the foyer. "About the wedding loan, and about my college fund." Mom emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Mason, what a wonderful surprise." "Is it?" I asked coldly. "I just had an interesting conversation with Mr. Jenkins. He seems to think you had a $60,000 college fund for me. Funny, since you told me family finances were too tight to help with my education. The color drained from both their faces. Their silent exchange, that familiar look passing between them, confirmed everything before they spoke a word. Mason, it's complicated, Mom began. Then uncomplicate it, I demanded. Where did my college fund go? Dad straightened, adopting the authoritative posture that had intimidated me as a child. It had no effect now. We made decisions as parents that we felt were best for the family. We don't owe you an explanation. You do if you want $25,000 from me. A new voice entered the conversation. What's going on? Sophia stood in the doorway to the living room, confusion on her face. Behind her, a tall man I assumed was Brandon watched uncomfortably. Perfect timing, I said. I was just asking Mom and Dad what happened to my college fund. The $60,000 they apparently saved for my education, but never gave me. Sophia looked between our parents, clearly surprised. What is he talking about? The ensuing silence confirmed what I already knew. Sophia had been kept in the dark as well, a beneficiary of their favoritism, but not necessarily a conspirator. Your brother is exaggerating, Dad finally said. There was some money set aside, but circumstances changed. What circumstances? I pressed. And where did the money go? More uncomfortable silence. The kitchen renovation, Mom eventually admitted quietly. And Sophia's car, some other expenses. My car. Sophia looked stunned. The one you bought me for graduation. That was Mason's college money. You needed reliable transportation, Dad defended. Mason was doing fine on his own. He had scholarships loans. He didn't need it like you did. The absurdity of his statement might have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. I worked 30 hours a week while carrying a full course load. I lived on ramen and shared a converted dining room with a curtain for privacy. I graduated with $20,000 in debt that I'm still paying off. How exactly was that doing fine? You've always been stronger, more resilient, Mom insisted. Look how well you turned out. A successful career, a nice condo. Everything worked out for the best. Despite you, not because of you, I said, finally voicing what I'd only muttered at dinner. I succeeded despite your lack of support, not because of it. Sophia stepped forward, her expression troubled. I had no idea, Mason. I swear. But... Her voice shifted, an edge of entitlement creeping in. That was years ago. What does this have to do with my wedding? They want me to loan them $25,000 for your dream venue, I explained, watching her reaction carefully. Well, it is an amazing location, she replied, missing the point entirely. And after all they've done for me, I can't let them down. Surely you can help, you're doing so well financially. Her response crystallized everything, the family dynamic perfectly captured in a single moment. My sister had been raised to expect support and accommodation, while I'd been raised to provide it without question. This is unbelievable, I said, looking between them. You stole my college fund, watched me struggle for years, and now want me to finance Sophia's extravagant wedding. Do you hear yourselves? Don't be so dramatic, Dad snapped. Nobody stole anything. That money was always ours to allocate as we saw fit. And you saw fit to give everything to Sophia, and nothing to me, as always. That's not fair, Sophia interjected, tears forming. You're trying to ruin my wedding because you're jealous of me. You always have been. The accusation was so backward it momentarily stunned me into silence. Brandon, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, finally spoke. Sophia, honey, I think your brother might have a valid point here. It doesn't sound like he was treated very fairly. She whirled on him. Whose side are you on? There shouldn't be sides in a family, he replied quietly. I'd never met Brandon before, but in that moment I felt a flash of respect for him. He'd seen our family's dysfunction in record time and had the courage to name it. He's right, I said. There shouldn't be sides. Parents should love and support their children equally. But that's never been the case in this family, has it? My parents' silence was answer enough. I'm not giving you money for the wedding, I stated firmly. Not a loan, not a gift, nothing. Figure it out yourselves, just like I had to figure out college myself." "You're being spiteful," Mom accused, tears welling. "This is Sophia's special day." "And college was my future," I countered. "But that didn't matter to you then, so the wedding doesn't matter to me now." I turned to leave a lifetime of suppressed emotions threatening to overwhelm me. As I reached the door, Brandon caught my eye and gave a slight nod. Acknowledgement, perhaps even respect. It was more validation than I'd ever received in that house. In the rental car hands, shaking on the steering wheel, I felt simultaneously devastated and liberated. The family story I'd told myself, that my parents had done their best with limited resources, had been a comforting fiction. The truth was uglier, but clearer. They had chosen Sophia's comfort over my basic needs repeatedly and deliberately. The betrayal cut deep, but the clarity was worth the pain. I started the engine, pulling away from the house where I'd never truly belonged, toward a future where I would no longer seek approval from those unwilling to give it. The Seattle skyline welcomed me home the following evening, its familiar profile against the sunset, offering a sense of belonging I'd never felt in Ohio. Haley was waiting at the airport, her embrace providing the unconditional acceptance my family never had. "You look different," she observed as we walked to her car. "More resolved?" "I am," I confirmed, recounting the confrontation and revelations. "It was worse than I imagined, Haley. They didn't just prioritize Sophia. They actively took resources meant for me and gave them to her." She listened without interruption, her hand occasionally squeezing mine at particularly painful points in the story. When I finished, her response was characteristically direct. "What now? What do you need?" The question was so fundamentally different from my family's approach, centered on my needs rather than their expectations, that it momentarily caught me off guard. "I need to establish clear boundaries," I finally said, "and I think I need professional help processing everything." 2 days later, I sat in Dr. Larson's office, a calm space, with muted colors and comfortable seating. Finding a therapist had been Haley's suggestion, one I'd initially resisted, but now embraced. "Family patterns are powerful," Dr. Larson observed after I'd summarized my history. "What you're describing, the consistent favoritism, the gaslighting about financial support, the emotional manipulation, falls under the umbrella of childhood emotional neglect. It can have lasting effects on how you view yourself and your relationships." Over the following weeks, our sessions helped me understand how my upbringing had shaped me, my drive for achievement as a substitute for parental approval, my discomfort with receiving help, my tendency to downplay my needs. We also discussed strategies for establishing healthy boundaries with my family moving forward. "Boundaries aren't about punishing others," Dr. Larson explained. "They're about protecting yourself. You get to decide what relationship you want with your parents and sister, if any." Meanwhile, my parents' messages continued alternating between guilt trips. Sophia cries herself to sleep over losing her venue, angry accusations, "After everything we've done for you," and attempts at negotiation. "What if we only asked for $15,000 instead?" I let most go unanswered, buying time to clarify my thoughts and intentions. Haley and I spent a Saturday morning drafting an email together, something I could refer back to if my resolve wavered during future conversations. The process was cathartic, helping me articulate years of unspoken feelings. After multiple revisions and a final review with Dr. Larson, I sent it. Mom, Dad, and Sophia. I've taken time to reflect on our recent conversations and the broader patterns in our family. This email will outline my position clearly to avoid any misunderstandings. First, I will not be contributing financially to Sophia's wedding. This decision is final and not open to negotiation. My refusal isn't about punishing anyone, it's about acknowledging the reality of our family dynamic and declining to perpetuate it further. The revelation about my college fund being redirected to home renovations and Sophia's car confirmed what I've felt my entire life, that my needs and future were consistently deemed less important than Sophia's wants and comforts. This pattern has caused deep hurt that I'm only now beginning to fully process. Moving forward, I need to establish clear boundaries. 2. I will not discuss financial support for any family member. My resources are mine to allocate according to my priorities and values. 2. I will not participate in conversations where my experiences are minimized or dismissed. Phrases like, "You turned out fine anyway," or "You've always been stronger," are not acceptable responses to legitimate grievances. 3. I will only engage in family communication that is respectful and acknowledges past inequities rather than denying them. Despite everything I do, love you all. I'm open to building a healthier relationship, but only if it's based on honesty and mutual respect. This would require acknowledgement of the favoritism that defined my childhood and a genuine commitment to change moving forward. If you're unwilling or unable to respect these boundaries, I'll need to limit our contact for my own well-being. This isn't an ultimatum, but a necessity for my emotional health. I hope we can eventually find a way forward that respects everyone's dignity and worth. Mason. The response was swift and predictable. My phone exploded with notifications within hours, voicemails from my mother crying about family loyalty, text messages from my father demanding I stop this nonsense and be reasonable, and a lengthy email from Sophia accusing me of deliberately ruining her happiness out of jealousy. I read everything but responded to nothing, following Dr. Larson's advice to give them time to process their initial reactions. They're experiencing the discomfort of having their narrative challenged, she explained. That's not your responsibility to manage. The family pressure campaign escalated. Distant relatives I barely knew began calling, obviously enlisted by my parents, to talk sense into me. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in years texted that I was breaking your mother's heart over money, while a cousin suggested I was making a big deal out of nothing. Parents always have favorites. I blocked the most aggressive contacts and crafted a simple, consistent response to others. This is a private matter between me and my immediate family. I appreciate your concern, but I've made my decision. Through it all, my support system proved invaluable. Trevor called regularly, offering both distraction and validation. Haley's unwavering presence reminded me daily that healthy, equal relationships were possible. My therapist helped me navigate the waves of guilt and doubt that occasionally threatened my resolve. 2 weeks after my email, an unexpected message appeared in my inbox from Brandon Sophia's fiancé. Mason, you don't know me, and I understand if you delete this without reading. I wanted to reach out privately to say I respect how you've handled this situation. The dynamics I witnessed in your family home were troubling, to say the least. Sophia and I have had some difficult conversations since your visit. She's struggling to reconcile the family narrative she's always believed with the evidence you presented. It's not easy for her to consider that her parents' favoritism might have caused you real harm. We've scaled back our wedding plans significantly, partly financial necessity without your contribution, but also because I can't in good conscience celebrate our union with such extravagance knowing it came at your expense. We've found a smaller venue that's actually more our style anyway. I hope someday you and Sophia might rebuild a relationship as siblings without your parents' influence coloring everything. That will take time and probably won't happen before the wedding. Either way, I wanted you to know that your stand made an impact, at least on me. Brandon. The message brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Not just acknowledgement of my experience, but evidence that my boundaries were creating ripples of change. A few days later, another surprise arrived. A handwritten note from Mr. Jenkins. Mason, I've been reflecting on our conversation and subsequent events. Your mother called me quite distressed. I want you to know I've always admired your determination and character. The way you've handled this difficult situation only confirms what I've always believed about you. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is refuse to participate in stories others have written for us. You're writing your own story now, and from what I can see, it's a good one. Take care of yourself. Arthur Jenkins. As weeks passed, the intensity of family communication gradually subsided. My parents eventually sent a stiff email stating they were disappointed in my choice, but would respect my decision, as close to acceptance as I was likely to get. Sophia remained silent. Meanwhile, life in Seattle continued. I threw myself into a challenging work project, earned another promotion, and began seriously discussing engagement with Haley. We'd been together nearly 3 years now, building a relationship based on mutual respect and support. Everything my family relationships had lacked. One evening, as we walked along Alki Beach, watching the sunset paint the skyline in dramatic oranges and pinks, I realized something profound. The approval I'd spent a lifetime seeking from my parents had never been forthcoming because it wasn't about me at all. It was about their own limitations and choices. And finally, at 31, I no longer needed it. 6 months passed like a deep breath, slowly released. The immediate storm of family drama subsided, leaving room for reflection and healing in its wake. The process wasn't linear. Some days brought clarity and peace, while others unearthed new layers of childhood hurt requiring examination. But overall, I moved forward. Dr. Larson helped me recognize that grief was an appropriate response to my situation. You're not just grieving the loss of your current relationship with your family, she explained during one session. You're grieving the relationship you never had but always deserved, the supportive, equitable family that should have been your birthright. I channeled much of my emotional energy into physical activity, joining a rock-climbing gym where the focused concentration required left no room for rumination. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. Learning to trust my own strength, finding new paths upward, occasionally falling, but always secured by proper supports. Haley remained my steadfast partner through it all. She knew when to offer comfort, when to provide distraction, and when to simply exist beside me in understanding silence. Her family continued to welcome me, including me in holiday celebrations and family vacations without expectation or condition. Their healthy dynamic served as both comfort and education. This is how family could be. My professional life flourished amid personal healing. The innovation team I'd joined delivered a breakthrough feature that significantly expanded our market share. My contributions earned recognition throughout the company, culminating in a director-level promotion that came with both increased responsibility and compensation. The validation of my capabilities by objective measures reinforced what therapy was teaching me. My worth existed independently of my parents' assessment. Trevor visited Seattle that spring, bringing his new fiancée to meet me and Haley. During a hike through Discovery Park, he asked about my family situation. Limited contact, I explained. They send occasional emails, surface-level updates, nothing deep. I respond similarly. It's civil, but distant. And you're okay with that? He asked. I considered the question seriously. I'm at peace with it. I can't change them, but I can decide what kind of relationship works for me. This is it, at least for now. 4 months after my boundary-setting email, an unexpected message arrived from Sophia. Unlike our parents' communications, which remained perfunctory and devoid of introspection, hers suggested the beginning of awareness. Mason. I got married last weekend. It was a small ceremony at Brandon's parents' lake house. Nothing like the extravaganza I once imagined, but perfect in its own way. I found myself wishing you were there, which surprised me given everything that's happened. Brandon has helped me see some hard truths about our family. I've spent my life accepting Mom and Dad's narrative without question. that I needed more support, that you were naturally more independent, that everything was fair in its own way. It's uncomfortable realizing how much I benefited from their favoritism while you struggled. I'm not writing to apologize for them. They're responsible for their own actions and choices. But I am sorry for my role in perpetuating the dynamic, for accepting advantages at your expense without questioning, for the times I must have hurt you without even realizing it. I don't expect this to magically fix things between us. I just wanted you to know I'm beginning to understand, and if you're ever open to rebuilding our relationship as adults, without our parents' influence coloring everything, I'd like to try. Take care, Sophia. I read the message several times, experiencing a complex mix of emotions: validation, cautious hope, lingering hurt. After careful consideration and discussion with Dr. Larson, I crafted a measured response. Sophia, thank you for your message, and congratulations on your marriage. The lake house ceremony sounds lovely and meaningful. I appreciate your reflections on our family dynamics. Recognition is an important first step toward change. While I can't erase the past hurt, I'm open to the possibility of a different relationship moving forward with some essential conditions. Respect for my established boundaries regarding our parents. Acknowledgement of past inequities without minimization. Space for my feelings without defensiveness. Understanding that trust will need to be rebuilt gradually. If these terms seem workable to you, perhaps we could start with occasional email exchanges to see where things lead. Wishing you and Brandon happiness in your new chapter, Mason. Her positive response opened a tentative channel of communication between us. Nothing close to the instant reconciliation portrayed in movies, but a fragile beginning built on more honest ground than we'd ever occupied before. Meanwhile, I reached a personal milestone I'd once thought impossible. After years of disciplined financial management, I made the final payment on my student loans, 14 years after starting college, but finally free of educational debt. The symbolic weight of this achievement felt significant, closing a chapter defined by my parents' failures and opening one characterized by my own success. With this financial burden lifted, I made another pivotal decision. On a weekend trip to the San Juan Islands with sunset painting the horizon in dramatic purples and golds, I asked Haley to marry me. Her joyful acceptance marked the beginning of a family we would build together, one founded on equality, mutual support, and genuine love. My parents' response to our engagement announcement was characteristically reserved. A brief congratulatory email, no mention of attending the wedding. I hadn't expected more and found I needed less of their approval than I might have once imagined. Their validation had become irrelevant to my happiness. Life continued to unfold in meaningful ways. Haley and I purchased a larger condo with space for her home office and my growing collection of musical instruments, a hobby I'd recently rediscovered after abandoning it in college due to time constraints. We adopted a shelter dog named Cooper, who brought unexpected joy with his enthusiastic approach to everything from morning walks to evening cuddles. My relationship with my parents evolved into something I could manage without sacrificing my well-being. I accepted that they might never fully acknowledge the inequity of their parenting or offer the apology I once craved. Their occasional messages remained superficial, and I responded in kind. Weather updates, basic career developments, nothing that invited deeper engagement. It wasn't the relationship I would have chosen, but it was one I could sustain without reopening old wounds. More surprising was the gradual development of my separate relationship with Sophia. Our email exchanges grew more frequent and substantive, eventually progressing to occasional video calls where we cautiously explored shared childhood memories from our different perspectives. She seemed genuinely committed to understanding my experience, even when that understanding reflected poorly on choices she'd benefited from. Brandon sometimes joined these calls, his outsider perspective often helping bridge communication gaps between us. Through therapy, supportive relationships, and deliberate reflection, I've extracted meaningful lessons from my family experience. Self-worth isn't determined by parental validation. My value exists independently of my parents' ability to recognize it. Financial independence provides more than material security. It offers protection from manipulation and control. Chosen family can provide the acceptance and support biology sometimes fails to deliver. Breaking generational patterns requires courage and conscious choice. I'm committed to creating different dynamics in my own future family. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're necessary for healthy relationships. Saying no to exploitation isn't rejecting love. It's requiring respect. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or continued vulnerability. I can release anger without exposing myself to further harm. The most profound healing comes not from changing others, but from changing how I respond to them. Looking back at my journey from that overlooked child, desperate for approval, to the confident adult, capable of setting boundaries, I recognize that my parents' greatest gift may have been unintentional, the resilience I developed navigating their favoritism. That resilience has shaped my character, career, and capacity for authentic relationships. As Haley and I plan our wedding, modest in scale but rich in meaning, I find myself grateful for the life we're building. It's not the family story I was born into, but it's the one I've chosen to create. And in that choice lies freedom. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who couldn't see their own favoritism or unfair treatment? Drop a comment below, sharing your experience and how you handled it. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of overcoming family challenges. And if you know someone struggling with similar family dynamics, share this video. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles is the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember you deserve respect and equal treatment even from family, especially from family.